So what happened at Muddy Water Ranch? In August 2025, humane agents seized 18 horses from Muddy Water Equestrian Park, also known as Muddy Water Ranch, in Springfield Township, Ohio. Authorities allege that horses on the property were severely underweight and suffering from inadequate care. Photographs appeared to show prominent ribs and hip bones, open wounds, and serious hoof problems. 2 horses connected to the case were reportedly in such critical condition that they had to be euthanized. The ranch's owner, Clarence Clemmons, was charged with 18 counts of animal cruelty. But the case did not end with a conviction. It did not even reach a full trial. Instead, the prosecution collapsed after a judge ruled that humane agents had violated Clemmons' Fourth Amendment rights during their investigation. Important evidence was suppressed. Prosecutors eventually abandoned their appeal, and the surviving horses are now supposed to be returned to Clemmons. As of August 2026, public reporting does not clearly confirm whether every surviving horse has been physically transferred back. However, Clemmons is legally expected to regain possession of them. That has left rescuers, donors, and animal welfare advocates asking a painful question. How can horses removed in such alarming circumstances and rehabilitated for months through the efforts of a rescue be sent back to the same owner? Before continuing, we need to make an important legal distinction. Allegations are not convictions. Clemmons pleaded not guilty and was never convicted of animal cruelty. The criminal case ended after key evidence was excluded. This video will distinguish between the allegations made by authorities, the observations reported by rescuers, the arguments raised by the defense, and the final outcome in court. The story before the main seizure in August 2025. According to Cincinnati Animal Care, humane agents received multiple documented complaints about conditions at the equestrian facility. According to Cincinnati Animal Care, humane agents received multiple documented complaints about conditions at the equestrian facility. 2 horses had reportedly already been removed from the property and surrendered to a rescue organization. One of those horses later collapsed and had to be euthanized. That event intensified concerns about the other horses remaining at the ranch. Humane agents visited the property, examined the animals, and ultimately removed 18 horses from Muddy Water Ranch. Cincinnati Animal Care then assumed responsibility for the immediate medical care, food, and boarding of the seized herd. Images released after the seizure were difficult to view. Some horses appeared extremely thin, with ribs, spines, and hip bones clearly visible. Reports described sores, open wounds, and poor hip conditions. One photograph appeared to show the sole of a horse's foot protruding through the bottom of the hoof. Cincinnati Animal Care described the situation as an investigation involving abuse and neglect. Clemmons did not accept those allegations. His defense would later argue that authorities focused on the photographs of the thinnest animals and that the evidence did not establish that horses had been subject to unnecessary pain. The animals were placed with experienced caregivers, including Fighting Chance Rescue, where the difficult process of rehabilitation began. Recovering a severely underweight horse is not simply a matter of filling a hay net and allowing the animal to eat as much as it wants. A malnourished horse can be at risk of refeeding syndrome, a potentially dangerous reaction caused by introducing too many calories too quickly. Rehabilitation may require carefully measured meals, repeated veterinary examinations, dental treatment, parasite control, farrier work, and constant monitoring. Each horse may need a different program. Some can begin recovering relatively quick. Others may suffer from chronic conditions, damaged hooves, or internal problems that develop over a much longer period. Building muscle, restoring healthy weight, and rebuilding trust can take months. According to rescuers, the horses arriving required significant care. Fighting Chance Rescue Manager Susan Pitzer told Fox 19 that many of the animals had extremely low body condition scores. She also claimed that horses arrived with recent saddle marks, suggesting that some have been ridden shortly before they were removed. Those were the rescue manager's reported observations, not findings tested through a complete criminal trial. Despite efforts to save every animal, a second horse connected to the seized herd had to be euthanized. Meanwhile, the surviving horses began showing signs of recovery. Photographs shared during the rehabilitation appeared to show significant physical improvement, but those improvements came with an enormous financial cost. Horses are expensive to maintain even when healthy. A large-sized herd can require hay, specialized feed, veterinary treatment, medications, farrier appointments, transportation, and suitable boarding every day. The legal case continued for months, but the horses could not wait for the court. They still had to eat, their stalls still had to be clean, their hooves still required attention. Rescue workers still had to care for them every morning and every night. Community donations helped fund the initial rehabilitation, but the money began to run out as court hearings were delayed. Cincinnati Animal Care eventually launched another appeal for donations, seeking approximately $35,000 to continue supporting the remaining animals. This meant that members of the public and nonprofit rescuers were helping pay for the care of the animals being held as part of an unresolved legal case. At the same time, Clemmons was fighting to get his horses back. Authorities charged him with 18 counts of animal cruelty, one associated with each horse removed from the property. Clemmons pleaded not guilty and challenged the government's right to enter his property, inspect the animals, and carry out the seizure. That legal challenge eventually became the decisive issue. The defense argued that investigators did not have a proper warrant authorizing the broader search. It also argued that Clemmons had not freely consented to the agent's presence and that officials went beyond the limited examination they were legally permitted to conduct. Prosecutors maintained that the animals needed urgent intervention. During a hearing in November 2025, an equine veterinarian testified that the recommendation to remove the horses was based on several observations. These reportedly included emaciated animals, a lack of suitable hay, poor housing, and general poor husbandry. However, the defense questioned whether the veterinarian and investigators had the legal authority to assess every horse. This was not initially a trial about whether Clemmons was guilty. The court first had to decide whether the government had obtained its evidence lawfully. Under the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, people are protected from unreasonable government searches and seizures. Authorities generally need a valid warrant, voluntary consent, or a legally recognized emergency exemption before searching private property. These protections apply even when allegations are emotionally disturbing. The judge eventually ruled that humane agents had coerced Clemmons into allowing them onto the property. Because the consent was ruled invalid, the court concluded that evidence obtained during 3 visits, including photographs central to the prosecution, could not be introduced at trial. This is called suppressing evidence. The ruling did not declare that every horse was healthy. It did not establish that every allegation was false. And it did not erase the fact that 2 horses were euthanized. Instead, it meant that the court believed the government had violated Clemmons' constitutional rights while obtaining important evidence. As a result, prosecutors could not use much of that evidence to prove the criminal charges against him. Hamilton County prosecutors initially announced that they would appeal the decision. They hoped a higher court would reverse the suppression ruling and allow the case to move forward. For several months, the horses remained in protective care while the legal process continued. Then, on July 17, 2026, the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office abandoned the appeal. A spokesperson said that the loss of the appeal ended the case against Clemmons. There would be no trial on the complete collection of photographs and observations. There would be no verdict determining whether the prosecution had proven the 18 cruelty charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And there would be no animal cruelty conviction. Then came perhaps the most controversial consequence of the entire case. The surviving horses were supposed to be returned to Clemmons. Because the criminal prosecution ended and the evidence supporting the seizure had been suppressed, the legal basis for continuing to hold the horses apparently fell away. Clemmons had already stated that he expected to regain possession of the animals. He also reportedly said that he arranged to sell some of them. As of August 2026, however, reliable public reporting does not clearly establish whether the physical transfer of every surviving horse has been completed. The most accurate statement is that Clemmons is legally expected to get the horses back. For the rescuers and donors who supported their recovery, that possibility is devastating. 3 horses had spent months receiving feed, veterinary treatment, hoof care, and daily attention. Members of the community donated money because they believed they were helping protect and rehabilitate vulnerable animals. Now, the horses they helped save may return to the same owner from whom authorities removed them. That outcome has understandably produced anger, but the legal reality must still be acknowledged. Clemmons was never convicted, and constitutional protections apply to everyone. The court did not decide that the reported conditions were acceptable. It decided that investigators had not followed the law while gathering evidence. This case, therefore, exposes a serious weakness in animal welfare enforcement. Compassionate alone is not enough. Concern alone is not enough. Even disturbing photographs may not be enough if investigators do not obtain them lawfully. Humane agents must know when a warrant is required, what constitutes voluntary consent, and what evidence is necessary to establish an emergency exception. Veterinarians, animal control officers, and prosecutors must coordinate before a seizure whenever circumstances allowed. Every step must be documented. Every inspection must remain within the limits of the law. Every warrant application must clearly explain why intervention is necessary. Because when investigators get those steps wrong, the consequences extend beyond the courtroom. Charges may be dismissed, evidence may disappear from the case, rescue organizations may be left with months of unpaid expenses, and animals removed because of suspected neglect may ultimately have to be returned. That is what makes the Muddy Water Ranch case so painful. 2 horses lost their lives, other horses required extensive rehabilitation, yet the central animal welfare allegations were never fully tested before a jury because the investigation became entangled in a constitutional violation. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, I am not AI. If you listen closely, you can hear me breathing. Also, we would love your video suggestions in the comments.